Every single day, millions of Americans reach for one of two pills, ibuprofen or diclofenac. Maybe it's for a headache, maybe for back pain, sore muscles, or swollen joints. They're cheap, they're fast, and they feel completely harmless. But here's what almost nobody asks before swallowing that pill. What is it actually doing inside the body? And which one is quietly more dangerous? Because the truth is, one of these common painkillers carries risks serious enough that some countries have restricted its use. And most people have no idea. So before you take another dose, stay with me. This might genuinely change how you think about pain relief. These two drugs are everywhere. They're used for pain, fever, inflammation, everything from a mild headache to chronic arthritis. You take a pill, and within an hour or so, the pain fades. That ease is exactly why people use them so casually. But here's the thing. Just because something works fast doesn't mean it's harmless. Ibuprofen and diclofenac are not the same drug. They feel similar, but they behave very differently once they're inside your bloodstream. And their risks are not equal. Most people only think about the short-term relief. They never stop to consider what's happening long-term. That gap in awareness is where real health problems start. So let's actually break it down clearly, simply and honestly so you understand what you're putting in your body. Both ibuprofen and diclofenac belong to a class of medicines called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. In plain terms, they block certain chemicals in your body that trigger pain and inflammation. That's why they work. But the key difference is potency. Diclofenac is significantly stronger. It hits inflammation harder, which is why doctors often prescribe it for serious conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or post-surgical pain. Ibuprofen is milder. It's what most people grab for a headache or a fever. And that difference in strength isn't just about effectiveness. It directly affects how much risk your body is exposed to. A stronger drug puts more pressure on your organs, and that's where the comparison between these two starts to matter in a very real way. For raw pain relief, diclofenac usually wins. It acts faster for severe pain and works more aggressively on inflammation. If you've got intense joint pain, a serious muscle injury, or a flare-up of arthritis, diclofenac will often deliver more noticeable relief. That's why it's the go-to prescription for those conditions. But stronger doesn't always mean better for you personally. Ibuprofen is a solid performer for everyday pain, headaches, toothaches, mild fevers, and minor injuries. It's not as dramatic, but for most common situations, it gets the job done. And critically, it tends to carry less risk when used correctly. So the real question isn't just which works better. It's which is actually appropriate for what I'm dealing with. Because reaching for a stronger drug when you don't need it is one of the easiest ways to quietly damage your body over time. Let's start with one of the most common and underestimated risks, stomach damage. Both of these drugs irritate the lining of your stomach. It might start as a mild burning sensation, a little nausea, or discomfort after taking them. Easy to ignore. But with regular use, that irritation can develop into ulcers, or worse, internal bleeding. And the warning signs, black or tarry stools, sharp stomach pain, vomiting blood, often don't show up until the damage is already serious. Between the two, diclofenac carries a higher risk here, especially when taken on an empty stomach or used long-term. Ibuprofen can cause the same problem, just typically at a lower rate when used correctly. But lower risk doesn't mean no risk. Taking either of these drugs casually, without food, or more often than recommended, can quietly create a problem that feels like an emergency later. This is where things get serious, and where most people are completely unaware. Multiple large studies have found that diclofenac significantly raises the risk of heart attack and stroke, comparable in some analyses to older prescription painkillers that were pulled from the market for the exact same reason. It affects how blood vessels function and puts extra strain on the cardiovascular system. And here's what makes it dangerous. The risk builds gradually. You don't feel it happening. One day things feel fine, then something major occurs. Ibuprofen also carries some cardiovascular risk, particularly at high doses or with long-term use, but the evidence consistently shows it's lower than diclofenacs. That's why several European countries have reclassified diclofenac as a prescription-only drug, specifically due to heart concerns. If you have high blood pressure, a history of heart disease, or you're older, this is not a minor footnote. It's a serious consideration. Your kidneys filter about 200 liters of blood every day. Both ibuprofen and diclofenac interfere with that process by reducing blood flow to the kidneys. Under normal conditions, your body compensates. But if you're dehydrated, elderly, or already dealing with kidney problems, even a few days of regular use can push your kidneys toward damage. What makes this particularly unsettling is that kidney damage is mostly silent. There's often no pain, no obvious symptom, just a slow, invisible decline in function. By the time most people notice something is wrong, real damage has already occurred. With kidney risk, the two drugs are fairly comparable, neither one is clearly safer than the other. Both require the same level of caution. The message here is simple. If you're taking these regularly, you should be drinking plenty of water and checking in with a doctor, not just reaching for the pill bottle whenever something hurts. Here's another effect most people never connect to their painkillers: blood pressure. Both ibuprofen and diclofenac can raise blood pressure, and they can make existing hypertension harder to control. For someone who's already managing high blood pressure with medication, these drugs can essentially work against that treatment. Diclofenac tends to have a stronger impact here, putting more stress on the cardiovascular system and compounding the heart risks we already covered. Ibuprofen's effect is generally milder, but still real. The problem is that elevated blood pressure, like kidney damage, gives you almost no warning. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly increases your risk of stroke and heart attack over time. And when someone is taking a painkiller daily for chronic pain, which many people are, this risk is not hypothetical. It's cumulative and ongoing. So which painkiller is actually more dangerous? Based on the full picture, heart risk, stomach damage, and blood pressure effects, diclofenac carries a higher overall risk profile. It's a more potent drug, and that potency comes with real costs that affect some of the most vital systems in your body. Ibuprofen, used correctly and in short courses, is the safer choice for most everyday situations. But this is where people make a critical mistake. They assume common and available over-the-counter means safe to use however I want. It doesn't. Both of these drugs can cause lasting harm when misused. The difference between them isn't just about which one is stronger, it's about how much your body is silently paying for that relief, and whether the trade-off is actually worth it for what you're treating. So what do you actually do with this information? Start with one rule: these drugs are for short-term use. Not every day. Not indefinitely. Use the smallest dose that actually works for the shortest time necessary. Don't stack painkillers. Combining multiple NSAIDs or mixing them with other medications dramatically increases the risk of stomach bleeding and organ stress. If you have heart disease, high blood pressure, kidney issues, or a history of stomach ulcers, talk to your doctor before using either of these regularly, because for you, the risks are amplified. Practical habits matter too. Always take these with food, drink plenty of water throughout the day, and pay attention to what your body is telling you. Warning signs like black stools, chest tightness, unusual swelling, or persistent stomach pain are not things to wait out. They are signals to act on immediately. Pain is real. The need for relief is completely valid. These medications exist for good reason, and for many people, they genuinely help. But there's a difference between using a tool wisely and reaching for it out of habit. The risks we covered today aren't rare fringe cases. They affect real people who assumed that something this common had to be safe. Next time you go to take one of these pills, just pause for 10 seconds. Ask yourself, do I actually need this right now? Is there something simpler I can try first? Do I know what's already in my system? Those 10 seconds could matter more than you think. Because when it comes to your health, convenience is never a good enough reason to stop paying attention.